So for the past few months, I have been working on my own custom browser engine, and it's getting along quite nicely, but I'm currently struggling a bit with parsing the CSS properties. So let me show you a quick example of what that might look like. Let's just create an index.html file, for example, and give it some basic stuff. And let's put body element in there, and then maybe a div. The div can have some content, for example, hello world. Let's give it an ID of foo so we can talk to it. Okay. Now if we want to add style to this element, we can do it of course with inline style, with CSS. So the style element. And what I'm talking about is this. So this is a rule, what we have right here with a selector. But the things that are inside the rules are the properties. So for example, it could be color red, and that would make the foreground red. You can quickly look at that. Firefox, what did I call it? Index.html. Doesn't want to load? It does not load. Okay. See, there we go. We have a red hello world. But right now we can't pass that CSS because we can pass the outer blocks, we can pass the selectors just fine, but passing the properties is a bit more difficult because different properties, of course, can have different values. So for example, 1px would not be a valid color because of course it's not a color, but it would be a valid value for width, for example. So we need to pass the property value based on the property name, and that's a little bit difficult. So I can show you what I have right now. For now, for testing, we only support two basic properties. You can see those in the style property enum, namely a color, which can have the value that a color can have, and a background color with a background color value. And these all have specifications that we can look at. So for example, this is the specification for the color property. It's a draft, but it's basically the same thing as the current property. And we can see that that valid values for a color attribute, for a color property, are either a color, which is a type in CSS, or it's the inherit keyword. So I could, for example, in the index.html file that we have here, I could also specify color inherit. And I suppose in that case, it would be default black, probably. Yeah, because the font style is inherited from the parent element, and the parent element doesn't have any interesting style. Okay, so my idea for parsing this is that we have this enum, and it's a key value pair. So if we have a color property, then it has an associated color value, and if it is a background color, then it has a background color value. And that way we can kind of distinguish between the values and store them as basically just a vector of style properties. That's the basic idea. Now the critical function right here is this parse value function, which takes in a CSS parser and matches on the property name. And then if it's a color, it should parse a color value, or of course the inherit keyword as we just saw. And if it's a background color, then what are valid background colors? Either a color value, a transparent keyword, or a inherit keyword. Now, of course, CSS has a lot of properties, so I don't want to write all of these parsers by hand. You can see, by the way, the definitions for the color value and background color value down here. And I would like to write a procedural macro in Rust that would implement a parser value for me. Because if you think about it, these enums can pretty trivially be parsed. I mean, the inherit variant is, all of these unit variants are just keywords. And I want to write a procedural macro that I can basically use like this. CSS property is probably what I'm going to call it. And then I could, for example, have an attribute here, keyword equals inherit. And this could be, what would I call it? Type, no, type is a Rust keyword. Value, and then it's a color value. And that way, that would mean that this color value can either be a color or it can be the inherit keyword. I wonder if there's an easier way to express this. I mean, I technically don't need these brackets around them. Or actually, I mean, we can technically infer that it's a color type based on the type that is stored in here. Technically, that would be possible. I'm not sure if it's something that I want to do. Yeah, let's just go with this for now. Though this color isn't even useful to me. Okay, let's not overthink it for now. Let's keep it like this and basically just add the keyword type for now. That's good enough for me for today. I haven't written a procedural macro in Rust in quite a while, so I expect that there will be some problems and it will probably be very fun. Okay. How do I get started? I suppose I need to create a new library for it. So let's go ahead and do that. Guess that doesn't matter. Okay. Let's create it in the web directory and let's call it maybe CSS property derive. Not a great name, but I suppose we can change it at any time later. It doesn't matter for now. Okay, then let's add it to the cargo.toml file so it's recognized. Web CSS property derive. Yeah, that's a really long name. I don't really like it, but I can't think of a better one right now. Okay. Then I think I need some dependencies. Probably syn and quote. Is quote still version 1 or did it also update to 2? Syn version. No. Actually, I want to use the other browser so you can't see all my search suggestions. Okay. Rust quote. Want to see if they've also updated to a new version. No, it's still version 1. Okay. So we are probably going to use syn and quote. And I do believe I also have to specify proc-macro equals true. I know that there's a proc-macro 2 crate that we can use in here. That's basically just exports the compiler internal types. But I don't quite know why we would need to do it. I know that you need the proc-macro 2 crate if you want to use the compiler internal types in a crate that is not a procedural macro. But I'm not sure if we need it right now. So I'm just going to try and move on without it. And honestly, at this point, I'm probably going to need a tutorial. So let's Rust basic proc-macro. I mean, what we're trying to write is pretty basic. So I don't expect to run into too much. Yeah, right. The proc-macro true, that's what I just did. And the proc-macro crate. Yeah, right. That's the compiler internal one. But then there's also on docs.rs the proc-macro 2 crate. Yeah, this one. Okay. So I don't want a function-like macro. I want a derive macro. Derive new inputs for the derive attribute. Right, that's what I want to do. So I need to annotate my main function, or one of the functions in this, with this. Pub function, what do we call it? CSS property derive, for lack of a better name. And then this takes a token stream as input and returns a token stream. And I need to import the token stream. Use token stream. And I don't want to call it answer function. I want to call it CSS property. I think I called it CSS property, right? Yeah. Let's also comment these out for now because I don't want to deal with all the debug spam. Still needs the clone and debug though. Just don't want to see the red file in here. Okay, why are you not valid? Is only usable with crates of the proc-macro crate type. Is that not what we're doing? Did I do something wrong? Proc-macro true. Oh, right. That was just VS Code acting up, I guess, or Rust Analyzer acting up. Okay, so now we want to parse an enum. And I believe within Syn there is an... Let's open the Syn documentation first. Latest version, yeah, that's the one we're on. And I believe there is an item enum type that we can parse. Yeah, that implements the parse trait. Okay, CSS property with an Y. Okay, let enum definition equal syn parse. And we want to pass the input, and if it fails, we just want to panic. Or rather, I guess we can provide an error message just to be nice. Expected, not a valid Rust enum. Whatever, that's good enough for now. And we do also have to provide an annotation, syn item enum. Right. Then let's also just return a token stream new, which is a new token, an empty token stream, just for debugging. Okay. So what kind of things does this have? I guess first we do need to declare that this macro will have a helper attribute, namely the keyword attribute. And I'm not sure how you do that, but I do remember that you have to do it. Rust proc-macro helper attributes. There's a fly on my monitor. Helper. Yeah, derive helper macro attributes. And attributes. Okay, so you do it like this. Attributes keyword. By the way, this macro will not be sufficient for long because CSS properties can become quite complex, and for example you can have something like border, which is a shorthand property for multiple different other things. So a valid border value would be 1 pixel solid black, for example, and that would be a shorthand for border width 1 pixel, border color black, and border style solid. So that is kind of a 3-in-1 for properties. And we can't pass that right now, but I also don't think that this is something that we need to worry about, at least not in the beginning. Okay. So let's, I guess, just iterate over the attributes. Yeah, let's iterate over the attributes of the variants of the enum. So we don't want the generics. Yeah, the variants. And this is a punctuated. What does that mean? A punctuated sequence of syntax tree nodes of type T separated by a punctuation. Oh, okay, so we don't care about the comma, we only want the variant, of course. Or can we just iterate over the punctuated? Yeah, so we can basically use it like a vector. Okay, nice. And then we have an ident and the fields. And if it's an enum variant, I guess there's only one field, maybe. Yeah, it's unnamed probably. Yeah, right. It's unnamed. It says right here it's like this, like some. So like the option enum. Okay. So I can work with that. let's iterate over all the enum variants. For variant in enum def dot, what was the attribute called? I already forgot. Variants. Oh, surprising. Do I need to call dot iter? Probably not. And then let's just what's the discriminant? Oh, right, that's if we assign an explicit value, which we do not care about, I suppose. Right, that we don't concern ourselves with that. But we do concern ourselves with the attributes. Check if there is a keyword attribute on that variant. And if it is, that's a keyword. And I suppose we should keep track of all the keyword variants we find and all the other ones as well. So let's note keywords, and then that I suppose the keyword would be a anti-vector, of course, initially, and then it would become a vector of 1 second. It's hard to talk and type simultaneously. A syn ident, which is the name of the enum variant, and a string, which is the keyword. And let's reverse the order because it makes more sense that way. Okay, and then if the variant dot attributes, which is what? It's a vector of attributes, okay? And the attribute is pound, style, bracket, token, and meta all. So how do I read this? What is meta? It's either a path. Name. We have a name value, right? Yeah, right. Right. And how do I read the meta name value? We have a path, which is, I suppose, the left side. Okay. So variant.attributes. Let's just iterate over the attributes as well. Attribute in variant.attributes. And I suppose we can take a reference. So we don't need to move out of this here. Okay, for the attribute, and then if the attribute dot meta dot if it's a name value, so meta name value. So if it's that, then we want to check if the path of the meta name value is equal to keyword, which we can do how get ident if matches some keyword name value dot path. Was that not an attribute? It does have a path. Get. Why does this not parse? Did I reverse the order of the arguments in matches? Oh, right, I did. I always mess that up. I don't know why, I can just never remember it. Okay, and then does that parse now? Some keyword. So it wants a ident. I don't suppose I can just, I mean, surely I can create a string from an ident. I must be able to compare idents. A string representation of the ident is available through the toString method. So that probably allocates, which is not optimal, but it's also just compile time and it's not going to be used that much. So I suppose it will be fine. So let's map this the ident to string. And then that whole thing as ref. No, as dref. Okay, that way it works. And now we want to take the reference. Okay, so at this point we have a keyword. And now we want the value of the attribute. Meta name value, and the value is an expression. And I think we only accept one single type of the expression, namely a string literal, which is where exactly? Literal. Surely there's a string literal type. Expression literal. A literal in place of an expression. Okay. Getting deep into the syntax tree here. And if that's expression literal equals the variant, no, the attribute dot, is that wrong? The meta name value, right? The name value dot value. Then we want to do something, and otherwise we want to panic. Invalid use of keyword attribute. Only string literals are accepted as values. Nice. Cool. And then this should be a reference to make all the things into references. And then the literal is this, and it should be a string literal. Can I verify this? Experlit, and then lit should be a string literal value, or rather, no, let's just call it keyword. And then we want to ignore the other attribute, namely the I can do it like this. That's not exactly pretty, but it does the job, and I'm not sure if there's a pretty way to, if there's ever a pretty way to write syn code. I mean, it's just kind of messy by design. I mean, it's Rust internals, parsing internals. It's always going to be kind of cumbersome. Okay, and now we have our valid attribute and we can push it to the keywords array. Push, and we want to push the ident, so attribute, no, to push the, first of all, we want to push the keyword to the string, and then the variant.ident. Nice. Does this work? It does not. Why do I still have to clone this? How deep do I have to go? Byte string. Oh, I can just call dot value. Nice. And then I want to clone the ident. Although I don't really care about the source of the ident, the source code annotation. I only care about the value, so maybe I should make this a string. But then again, I don't think I really need to care. Okay. And if we have this, then we first of all can stop iterating over the attributes. So break out of this loop. And then let's actually break out of the outer loop. Variants. How do I do label in Rust? I don't do this a lot. Rust for loop labels. Not labs, labels. Nesting and labels. Alright, I have to add this weird character in here. And then I can, okay. But I don't actually want to break, I just want to continue. We're on this variant. Okay, now there's another possibility that it might not be a keyword. In that case, we expect it to always be a type. So a variant name with a single type contained in it, and then we just try and parse that type. We assume that the type that is contained in here does also imply CSS-Parse, which is sort of the core trait that the parser uses to parse values. So for example, inside a random selector in here, all of these selectors imply CSS-Parse, for example, and that allows the parser to parse a selector from a token source. Anyways, getting off topic here. So I want to check if it is a value that has an enum field. And so how can I do that? Actually, check if there is a... Actually, I just wrote that. Let me delete the line, please. And then the second option is check if it's an enum variant, like color. Okay, how do I check that again? We have item enum, then the variant. And I care about the fields. If variant.fields, and what should the fields be? I want the fields to be unnamed. And then I want the fields to be very short. I want only one single field. And that is not going to be easy, so let's just use two ifs here. If let fields unnamed fields equal variant.fields by reference, of course. And then if the unnamed fields dot unnamed.len is not equal to 1, then we want to panic. CSS properties can only contain one single value. That's good enough for now. And then we want to get the first. Actually, I can do it like this. Match, or rather, if let some value type equals unnamed fields at first. Oh, unnamed fields dot unnamed dot first. And then if that is not the case, if it is none, then I want to panic. Nice. Okay. So at this point we have a single value type, a single field. And now I want to get the identifier of the field, because why is the identifier optional? When would a field ever not have an identifier? Oh, right, because I thought the variant would also have an identifier, but this field, this ident here, is not the identifier of the variant, of course. So I don't care about the attributes, I don't care about the visibility, I don't care about the mutability. I don't care about the colon token, I care about the type. I suppose the ident in our case would always be none because we are inside unnamed fields. And the fields are not named, so they wouldn't have an ident, I suppose. I'm not sure about that. But I also don't really care right now. Okay, so we care about the type. And I suppose we only don't want maybe the path. I don't want this, I don't want the function, don't want trait bounds, cannot infer the type, cannot use macros, cannot use this type. I think I want a path. A path like std slice eater. So I suppose this can also be a path of length 1, right? Oh, this is... it's really not that fun to use Syn, really. Okay, let's go back a little, and I want to use the type of the field. So if value type dot type, because of course it's useful to save the 2 characters in the word type for some reason. Oh, right, because type is an identifier, I suppose, inside Rust, not an identifier, a reserved keyword. I guess that's kind of fair. So we can give that Syn type path equals value path of type, and then else we want to panic CSS properties must be simple types. That's not really a helpful error message, but I don't want to write path types because that's even less helpful, arguably. Okay, so now we have a type path. Can I just convert that to a string, please? Please let me be done. I want the path, and then I can convert that to a string. Right, that's what I just did. Okay. And then the let value type name equal type path dot ident dot expect CSS property value type must have identifier. Must have simple simple identifier, and let's also specify what that means. It means that we don't want any of these characters in there. Okay, and then I suppose I want to create a second list with all the value types, which is also a vector of string and syn idents. It's also initially empty, and that's where all our value types are going to go. And then let's value types dot push, and I want to push the value type name dot toString, right? Because that's an ident, and then also the variant dot ident dot to. Yeah, let's not use idents here. Let's just convert everything to strings. Let's make this a string and the one right above it too. So to string. Great. So this is quite nice. I suppose now we have everything we need. Okay. So at this point we will want to actually generate the code. And this is where we have to use quote. And I'm really not experienced with using quote at all. So I know that we can kind of interpolate things with the hashtag. What's the difference between quote and quote span? Applies a given span to all tokens. Okay. Why would I care about that? Pretty please. I could use that for I could use that on other parts of the code, but I'm not going to concern myself with that right now. Let's also close some of these types. Man, syn documentation is just something else. Okay. So we do want quote, but how can I I want to generate something for every element in the two vectors. I mean, I don't technically have to use quote. But I suppose there's probably a nice way to do this. And quote is in our dependency tree anyway, so we might as well use it. Rust quote for each element of vector. Probably not gonna find anything. Yeah. Rust quote vector. So what I want to do is generate a piece of code for each keyword variant and each value type variant, and then bring it all together into one big piece of code. But I suppose it's also fine for now to just use strings maybe. Oh, right, and if we find this, then we also want to continue on the variants. And then if we reach this point down here, then we panic and say that the CSS property variant must either have an associated parsable value or a keyword annotation. Nice. And then down here we can process our keywords and so on. Okay, let's think a little about how we want the final code to look like. So for example, for this color value, I need a check that does something like if next token is identifier. So if let token ident or literal ident. This is pseudocode, by the way. Right now, I'm just sketching out ideas. Equal next token, and then for each of the keywords, I want to say if the ident is equal to that keyword, then return self the ident of the stored value. Okay. And I do suppose we do want to do that with a match, maybe. And otherwise, I guess it makes sense to check for keywords first. Right, because it's really easy to find out that something is not a keyword, because if the first token is not an identifier, then, well, it's not a keyword. But colors can be really complex, for example, because you can have, you can have really simple colors like this, like color red, but you can also have more complex colors like color hex FF, and then you can actually have 8 digits. The parser here doesn't even recognize that, but it is valid CSS. I have checked it. 5 is not valid, but 6. Oh, right. Never mind. That was my fault. You can have either 3 or 6 or 8 or 4 digits, but nothing else. Hex digits, of course. And then you can also have, of course, functions like RGB 3, 5, 10, and then even an alpha value like 1. Fun fact, to specify an alpha value, you do not need to specify RGBA. You can also use the RGB function. And you should actually omit the commas, because the commas are legacy syntax. But I'm getting way off topic again. Okay, so my point is that it is quite easy to find out that something is not a keyword, but it can be quite hard to find out that something is not a color, for example, because you have to go through each of these variants that I just showed you, through each of these variants and check, well, is it a keyword? No. Well, is it maybe a function? Is it maybe a hex code? And that can be quite cumbersome, especially if you have multiple of these types. So it does make sense to check if something is a keyword first. And I guess usually I think there's a decent number of people who use the keywords for colors, even though they are quite exotic colors. But probably red and something like that is quite commonly used, I suppose. Okay. So for each of the keywords, let's generate a match case arm that matches from the keyword to self and then the ident. And again, this is pseudocode. And it should be a return, of course. Yeah. Okay, I guess we can do that. So let's go in here and let keyword match. It's so hard to come up with good names here. Keywords dot iter dot, and we want to map each keyword to a Guess we want to put the codes in there separately. And then in here, the first value is, what's the first one? The keyword value, right. So it's the keyword.0, and the other one is keyword.1. Actually, I think in Rust you can do some pretty neat syntax. Rust format. Because I think you can name the arguments actually. Yeah, right here. Y equal 10. I guess can I edit this? No, I can't. Okay. Because then I could say name is this and variant is this. I could of course create a struct for this and then store the struct inside this vector, but I'm not sure if that's worth the. Actually, it's not that much effort. Let's just create two structs. Struct keyword name is a string and variant say string. And then just to be good boys, let's also derive clone debug on that. And pretty much the same thing for the value type. Value type. What a type name. And then we want this to be a vector of keyword. I hate when it does that. I just imported some random ass thing from the standard library that starts with key. That's really annoying. Rust Analyzer has a few of these issues with that, which are just terribly annoying. Keyword name is that, and the variant is that, and we don't no longer need this parentheses. My Rust Analyzer seems to have died. Why? I guess it died when I created the thing. Can I maybe restart it? Web CSS property derive. Huh? Cat web CSS. No, it's in the right path, definitely. Maybe I do just need to restart it. Analyzer. Restart server, I guess. Will everything be okay? Did I break Rust Analyzer? And then I guess in the meantime we can also create this thing. Why are you already failed to load manifest for workspace member? But there is a cargo.toml right here. Failed to read. Failed to run this. Do I just... I'm kind of confused as to why this is happening. Did I mistype something in here? No, it's definitely called CSS proper. Oh, am I not allowed to put dashes in the name? No, I do have DOM derive and parser combinators, which is kind of inconsistent, but I'm not going to fix that right now. So why is it complaining? Maybe because we have like active errors in here. Value type. And then the value, I called it the type name. and the variant, because I would also like to have Rust format again. I don't care so much about Rust Analyzer, but Rust format is kind of nice to have. I think I'll just restart VS Code and hope for the best. Because I'm kind of confident that it's not me who's doing something wrong. I mean, the crate is exactly where it is. It's exactly where it says it should be. Yeah, there we go. Rust Analyzer was just drunk. That's always fun to use Rust Analyzer. Recently, I also had it panic on me. That was fun. Reported a GitHub issue to them. Okay, so now you're no longer keyword, you're now keyword.name. And I suppose no, I also don't need these anymore because now it's very obvious what they are. Variant. And then can I please run Rust format on this thing? There we fucking go. Argument never used. Of course it's not, because I am not done yet. Return, and then it's probably okay because we want to return a result type. Sorry, I'm getting kind of distracted. And then self and the variant name. Right? Yeah, that looks good. And then we do want to collect that into a vector of strings. And we want to join it with commas. Nice. So that's the keywords. And then how do we want to pass the other types? Basically, for each type, we want to go if that's some value equals parser.parse optional the ident parse, and then if it is that, then we want to return okay self ident value, where of course this ident is the type name and this ident is the variant name. I guess I could call it variant name. And then we just chain these one after another. Yeah, that's probably the best way to do it. The parse optional method is really handy because if parsing fails, then first of all, if parsing fails, then the parser is in an unspecified state, because none of the parsing functions guarantee the state that the parser will be in once they return an error. But parse optional will apply the inner parser and then check, hey, did we get an okay or did we get an error? If we got an error, then please revert back to the start and act as if nothing happened and just return none. And that is also why this function cannot ever return an error, because if the inner parser fails, then we return none. So there's never a reason to return an error. Okay, so I want to do it like this. Okay. So very similar to what I just did for the keywords. Let variant type match. No, it's not really a match. Let's just call it code. I mean, it really doesn't matter. This is a procedural macro. It's not going to be edited that much, although we will have to expand it at some point to support more formats. Okay. Called it value types. Yeah, I'm really inconsistent here. This should also be a value type code. This is not pretty code, but it's good enough for now. Value type. And what do we want to map the value type to? Again, it's a format. Let's do it like this. And then if let some value equals parser.parse optional, and the parse optional should be the type parse. Is that correct? Yeah, that should be correct. And then we have to use the double brackets here because the single brackets are arguments for the format macro. So if we have successfully parsed an optional type, then we want to return OK of the type name, no, of self, the variant name, and then contained within the variant should be the value. And then that is basically it. Right. Collect into, can I collect it into a string? Does that work? Ah, that's quite nice. Maybe it doesn't parse far enough because we're not supplying the arguments yet. Okay, I want to value type dot type name. No, value type dot type name. And the other one should be value type dot variant. And that actually parses, quite nice. Very nice, actually. Okay, so now I need to put all of this together. And I guess I can also remove the quote dependency because I'm not going to use quote for now. I'm just going to do it all with strings, which is probably going to be a bit slower, but I'm actually not sure if it will be much slower because it's not like we're parsing the Rust code twice during the first parse, for lack of a better word. All of this will just be a string, right? I mean, it's probably not really optimal, but then again, who really cares? Not me. So I believe I can return a string and then call .into on it. All right, this can fail if the string is not valid. Rust code proc-macro produced invalid Rust code. And the trait proc-macro token stream. But I'm sure that it did that before. Wait, how are we doing this in another library inside the DOM derive? We're doing something. No, that one. No, it's not quite that. We're actually using syn in here. Can we quote? Can we also use quote in here, maybe? Let's look at the documentation. Proc-macros. Let's look at the documentation for token stream. Because I know that you can parse a token stream from string. Oh, sorry, I just have to use from string. Oh, right. Of course, now it needs to be the other way around. Token stream from string. But I'm sure it also implemented this on just a string. Am I insane? Apparently. And now I need to import this trait, and now it should work. Very nice. Okay, then let's final code. All right, let CSS property impl equals one last big format. Then we're done. And then that's what we put into the token stream. Okay, and what do we want to format? We have a pub, imply the lifetime of a CSS-Parse a for what exactly? For the type name of the enum, which we still have to get at some point. And then we need to a definition for the parse function. Parser, and this will return a result of self-parse error. Okay, and then first we want to match. Actually, let's do I need to add comments in here? Probably not. Yeah, probably not. We want to match. On what exactly? On the parser.next token. All right. It's not actually quite that simple because, of course, I don't want to consume the next token. So I guess I also need to use an optional here. And then if the optional succeeds, add some parsed keyword variant equals parsed keyword, and then I just want to return okay variant, and then we can try and parse the keyword as an optional thing up here. Let's parsed keyword equals parser.parse optional. And then, and now we can match on the stuff, right? Now we can match on the parser.next token, because right now we're using this inner parser in here. And then the parser next token is, of course, oh, it's not that simple because I need some token. Oh, no, never mind. Of course, if it's not an ident, then I don't care either way. If let some token identifier. So if the next token is an identifier, then now I want to match on the identifier, and now I can insert all of my code, the keyword match code. Great. And I suppose in here I can just add the value type code at the bottom, because that code really doesn't care about anything. And then if we reach this part down here, then it's an error of a parser. Right. This is not really hygienic because, of course, we're using all of these types like parse error and such without the full paths, which is not that great for usability. Because, of course, if the current namespace contains another parse error that is not the one we expect, then this might break something. But let's not worry about that for now. Let enum, let's also read the enum name at the beginning, so we can use it at the end. Where is I want an item enum. The idents. Okay, so it's very simple. Enum def.ident.toString. Great. I don't really like the fact that I have to use a string in here. I probably could do this with quote. But then again, is it that much of a difference? Probably not. And then we just take the reference down here. Okay, so that could now theoretically work. I guess the only way to find out is to test it. I mean, it won't work first try, of course. But I can dream. What did I call the macro? I called it CSS property. So let's derive CSS property, and let's also import, of course, the crates. And can I use this as a build dependency? CSS property derive, and the path to that is // CSS property derive. Do you work now? We just compiled the macro and it does not work. Cannot find derive. Yes, you can. Don't lie to me. Is that just Rust Analyzer being flaky? No, it's not. Use CSS property. But it should be available. I don't think that I need to import it in here. Oh, I probably can't use it as a build dependency then. Although it is technically only used during build time, of course. And okay, now I need to import it. CSS property. I cannot find traits CSS-Parse. Right, that is what I was talking about. Guess I'm fine with it not being hygienic for now. Syntax token, so let's just import the necessary types. But then it's parse optional value and not parse optional, I guess. Would be nice if I actually knew my own API. Although maybe we could call it parse optional in the future. Parse optional value is kind of a mouthful. If expressions without else evaluate to nothing. Expected reference. Okay, so I think I know where this one is triggered, probably in here. So I probably need to call as ref and the identifier. But then why does it complain about it doesn't build, right? Yeah. So it's complaining about an if expression without an else. And where is there an if expression without an else? Wait. No. So here's an if expression, but that one doesn't need an else because it's using return. And then there's also this, which also doesn't need a else expression because it's also just returning. Do I have cargo expand in here? Cargo, oh right, I think I have to use it like this. Cargo install cargo expand. Cargo expand is a pretty useful subcommand that can just show you the what the macro expands to. Super useful for debugging this kind of stuff. Because as you just saw, the Rust compiler itself doesn't exactly give us a lot of information. Which is understandable, but not that great. I wonder if I can find it myself, though. This one doesn't matter, this one doesn't matter. None of these should matter. Oh, I suppose it's going to be quite a lot. item enum not found in syn. Wait, what? Huh? It most certainly is. There is an item enum type. I can see it right here. Is it? Oh, is cargo expand maybe using the wrong syn version? If I go back to syn version 1, is there maybe no item enum in here? No, it's right there. So why? What are you complaining about? I don't understand. Available on create feature full only, but I have full. I mean, that's kind of weird. So I guess cargo expand isn't really useful for now. Manual debugging it is, I guess. Expected result, color value, found. Found nothing. Consider adding an else block that evaluates to the expected type. Okay, what happens if I just don't do this? Is the error still there? It is still there. What happens if I what happens if I also remove this? Is the error still there? It is still there. Even though I'm not even... Oh, I'm just an idiot. I am just a complete buffoon. Of course, if it is not an identifier, I want to return a parse error. Wow, I should really have spotted this like ages ago. That was not that hard of an error to see. And of course we do need to cover the else, because if it's none of that, then we also want to return or evaluate to an error of a parse error. And then I guess actually we don't need the return in here, which makes it a bit nicer. And a missing comma here to end this mesh arm. Fair enough. And are we actually compiling right now? And we are panicking. Right, because probably we're running into this piece of code right here. I'm currently parsing like a demo, some demo CSS in here. So some very simple rules with one selector and one property. Let's make this a bit more interesting with ADC, just for fun. And now I would like to actually parse a color value. Self color of color value parse. Parse that. If that's an error, then we want to error out. And we assume that it is actually that property. I don't really like wrapping my match arms in OK, so let's just return OK property down here. And then let's return an error, parse error in here. And that could now wait. Rust Analyzer is dead again. Yep, I found another bug in here. Sadly, I did... Wait, did it just completely panic? It actually did. Wow. Something that I am doing with my code seems to really be hitting the unused paths in Rust Analyzer, because just a week ago I found another panic. And I mean, Rust Analyzer is not that unstable usually, but I guess whatever I touch tends to blow up and die in flames. Sadly, I'm not sure when it panicked exactly. It doesn't really include a timestamp. I guess I can look at it later in the video. But for now, I don't really have a way to recreate this, because I just saw the panic message just now. And it might have panicked like 10 minutes ago. But let's first run the code and see what it evaluates to. And by the way, all right, that's some just debug window that I'm showing. By the way, I have implemented this color value parsing before, so we can parse that. I am seeing a property and but I'm not seeing any rules. Okay, one step at a time here. So we have found a property which is a color, a color which contains another color. This is a bit ridiculous, but this is the wait, I should call this, why is this not a color value? What? Why does it not say color value? Because I assume this outer color is the CSS property, so this one. But then the second one should be a color value. Either way, the colors do seem about right. What hex code did I said A. So let's just quickly check that. Hex AA, is that 170? That is 170. Beautiful. So we have successfully parsed a color. But once we actually step out of the CSS parser, then we don't have any rules anymore. So why is that? Why is that? Who is deleting my rules? How dare they? I suppose we need to look in the rule parser. Semicolons, last one is optional. Oh, I understand what's going on here. Okay, so let me jump back a little. So in the example CSS that I have in here, I have probably used a semicolon, right? Okay, so let me explain what's going on here. When we are parsing the body of this rule, we create a delimited parser that contains only the stuff between the brackets in here. And when we parse, we skip all the white space, we parse the color, we parse the value, and then we're at the semicolon. But we don't parse the semicolon yet. But because we don't parse the semicolon and we just exit back to the main parser, the main parser sees, hey, you are not done parsing all of your stuff yet. You still have the semicolon and 4 white space left. This must be an error, because clearly you have aborted prematurely. You're not done yet. You should continue parsing and either contain an error on OK type. So we need to somehow take care of these. But the tricky thing with CSS is that, first of all, the semicolon here is optional, and it's always optional if it's the last rule. So if I had another rule up here, like background color red, then this one must have a semicolon, but the bottom one does not. So this would be fine without a semicolon, and it would be fine with a semicolon, but up here, no semicolon, that would not be fine. Right. So let's, how can we verify that? First of all, if we're done parsing the value, then we should skip white space, because between the value and the and the semicolon, there could be any number of white space, though technically the style property should skip any white space after it, but let's not rely on that for now. And then parser.expect token. Okay, so if we can expect a token and it's a token semicolon, but if it is an error and then there's no tokens following and then there's nothing but white space after it, then we also return true. So I'm kind of thinking about how we can express this nicely within code. First of all, if this is an error, then if this is not the last rule in the last property, if this is not the last property in the rule body, this is a parse error. And something that is quite annoying about CSS, that has legacy reasons, for compatibility reasons, is that if there's a single invalid property within this entire rule body, so for example, if I had spelled background color terribly wrong, then the parser would go, oh, well, this is clearly an invalid property, but theoretically it would be entirely possible to just skip until the next semicolon and then continue parsing from there. That would not be a problem at all. But for legacy reasons, we have to throw the entire rule away, because some very smart websites on the internet decided to kind of abuse this as user agent detection, because they would write something like whatever mods border, some user agent specific property, and then this rule would only apply to Mozilla user agents, so Firefox. And of course, this is a terribly broken system, terrible way to do it. And because of these people, we now have to throw away the entire rule block, because not doing so would break compatibility with quite a large number of websites. Anyways, that's the web compatibility rant for today. Okay. So now we would like to skip whitespace again, and then if parser, I guess parser.is do I have an exhausted? I have a parser.expect exhausted. Right. And then I can break. Do I want to break? Yeah, because then it doesn't make sense to check if there's another identifier, because we just checked that our parser doesn't have any more tokens. So let's remove that to do, and let's try again. Hey! Okay. First of all, it's quite hard to read those, so let's remove one of the two rules that we had in here. Let's try again. The selector debug representation is not that great yet. So we have a parsed rule with some selector stuff that's up to here, and then we have no properties. Why do we not have any properties? Do we not add them to the array, to the vector? Oh, yeah, we never do that. I do suppose that could be something that we might want to do. Property with value. My variable names for some reason are just getting worse and worse lately. Let's push those. Cannot borrow properties as mutable, of course. It should be a mutable vector. Otherwise, there's not really any point. And now, hopefully, we should see a color property. That is so nice. That is really, really nice. That is really, really Just nice. So we have now successfully parsed a basic CSS rule, and we have hopefully done so in a way that should be easily expandable to other rules. So let's try and add it for the background color value too. That's a keyword transparent. And this one is the keyword inherit. I think every CSS property can be inherit. I might be wrong about that. I haven't looked too deep into the concrete CSS syntax yet, but I do believe that every property can be inherit, and if so, then it might make sense to implicitly add the inherit thing. Or I guess we can spell it out every time just to be very precise about it, very clear that it can be an inherit. Yeah, let's not try and save some unnecessary lines. That just makes things way too complex. Okay, so something that we will have to think about in the future, like I said, is properties with multiple values. So right now we only support either a color or a keyword, but in the future we should also support a color and a keyword, for example. And the way I imagine we could do that is maybe by saying something like, this is a group equal 1, and this is a group equal 2. And then maybe there's a third keyword, some keyword equal not inherit, for lack of a better word, and this would also be group equal 2. And then the parser could go, oh, well, for group 1, we have only a color, so I will try to parse a color. And then group 2 can be either inherit or not inherit. So one of those two. So it would be not inherit as a variant. Of course, then I couldn't just use an enum anymore. I would have to... no, of course, this would need to be a struct then. I suppose it's maybe fine to have one simple derive macro for the enum values, because I think most CSS values are still words articulation is hard. Most CSS values are still in the enum representation, so there's only one possible value at a time. And the multi-value stuff, I think that's the exception rather than the norm. And maybe I can also do some funky business where I, for example, let color could also pass multiple values, though that would get messy quite fast. Either way, that's not something that we have to worry about today. Right now, all we're doing is supporting some very basic CSS properties. And I think this is great progress that we've made today. Let's just check that we can also use the background color. Background color RGB 111. And let's not add a semicolon here just for testing. Please just work. It does not work. Okay, so why right, and you can see in practice here what I just said earlier. Because there's apparently one wrong rule, the color rule is completely fine, but the background color rule is not fine. And because there's one invalid rule, we are dropping the entire style sheet. Sorry, not the entire style sheet, the entire qualified rule. By the way, sorry if I mess up the terminology a bit. When I say rule, I usually mean this entire thing, including the selector. And these individual lines, they are just properties. And this is called the selector, and just the brackets, braces are they called in English, I believe. Those are called the rule body. So I might mess that terminology up a bit. Please don't worry about it. Okay, let's find out why our background color does not work. So parse expect exhausted. Info expecting parser to be exhausted. And then let's log in here. Was exhausted. Wait, I wrote this. The logic here is completely wrong. No, it's not. Never mind. I just confused myself. It happens. We don't even hit that code path. That is not great. That is seriously not great. Do we ever get down here? Where do we error out? Okay, and do we ever... I mean, we never even find the second property, right? Did I not add this in the property parser? Wait, why are we not panicking? Huh? We should panic. Background color value parser, and then right. So why didn't we panic earlier? I wonder. Let's go in here and just log out whatever it is that we're trying to parse. Trying to parse property name. Interesting bugs today. Quite interesting bugs. So we never even try to parse a background color. That is quite weird. So I suppose we fail on the colon check. Let's try to next token. Let's try to print out what's the next token. If it's not a colon, then it must be something else. Peak token. We don't actually want to consume the token, we just want to peek. Just take a little peek at it. So here it is a colon, but wait, we never even hit that? How? Where do we error out? Oh, so it's apparently the next thing after that is not an identifier. Why are you not an identifier? Let's actually just move this line down a bit and maybe remove some of the other debug spam that's not important anymore. So what is the next token if it's not an identifier? The next token is white space. White space is just... wait, but we skip white space in here. Oh, but after the semicolon, of course, there can be more white space. At some point, I will have to do something about this eternal white space problem, because it's getting seriously annoying to just always tell the parser to skip eventual white space, because white space can pretty much be anywhere in CSS. Okay, so we're panicking on some other stuff. Line 715 in color.rs. I assume that's not something that we're going to fix today, because that's inside the color parser, and I don't want to concern myself with that right now. Oh, right, it's modern RGB syntax. We don't support that yet. Actually, let's add a modern RGB syntax. Is that why do I not get syntax highlighting for this? Because, wait, is it because Rust wait, but I should still have syntax highlighting? I feel like I've broken some pretty major things today. but that's fine. Is Rust Analyzer even running anymore? Okay, I just restarted it, I guess. Okay, where was I? Right, I can't use the modern RGBs. That is not the modern RGB syntax. That should be the old one. Should it not? I think if I use the commas, then it should be the old syntax, and we do support the old one. Let's look at our unit test, legacy RGB. What happens if I make it non% in here? Does it have to? It's really annoying that, okay, this is something that we can fix another day when Rust Analyzer is not immediately panicking. Why? Okay, so it just panics basically as soon as I open the workspace. With a 10,000 line backtrace, pretty much. Okay. Well, I guess I can just specify the color as usual. Let's call it Misty Rose. That's quite a nice color. Sort of a shade of pink. And now we do indeed see that I believe this is Misty Rose. I'm not sure though, let's check. CSS Misty Rose. I really like the name Misty Rose. Okay, can I please see the RGB code? 255, 228, 225. And that is exactly what we are seeing. Down here, by the way. Very nice. Very, very cool. I really like these changes. Okay, then let's get rid of some of the debug statements that I added, because those are pretty much the spam. I guess we can get rid of found property as well, though I had that before. And trying to pass property doesn't matter anymore. So are there any log statements left that I forgot about? No, there are not. Very cool. Very, very cool. So now with these changes, we can basically parse a CSS style sheet. Of course, we don't support a lot of rules right now. Right now, it's just color and background color. But with the way we've written this, it should be very easily extendable to more rules. So for example, the display property is another very clearly enum representable value. And I think that is something that we should definitely do soon, because the display is necessary for layout. And now that we can parse a CSS style sheet, the next logical step is, of course, to implement the layout algorithm so we can actually render things. And we're not eternally stuck with this debug screen where I was just trying to test out my font renderer algorithm. Okay, great. I am very, very happy with these changes. I think they're great. Though I don't understand why it keeps saying color in here and not background color value, because the thing inside the background color is a background color value and not a color. Perhaps that is related to the panic in here. Maybe, who knows? I might try to minimize this later and report it to them, to the GitHub. Might, because this is quite a huge workspace. And I might also just ignore it. And maybe it's fixed in another update. The last panic I reported had already been fixed in an update, and I just wasn't running on the latest version. Either way, let's try and make a commit out of this. Web core. Okay. First, yes, I do want to add that. do want to add that. Do want to add that. Wait, what was that? Curly brace open. All right, that was another unrelated bug fix that I did earlier. Let's just put it into this commit too. I'm sure no one is going to notice. This is a private project right now anyways. I do intend to make it public at some point, but for now, commit hygiene isn't super important. Of course, I do try to be as clean as possible. Fix me. Right, that's the rule parser body. Nice. And now I also need to add the cargo toml. Yeah, no, not cargo toml, cargo toml. And that's just to get div being weird again. Let's also add the cargo lock. Yes, yes, nice. And then of course git status, and we still need to add the entire. All right, I still need to add git web core, the cargo toml for the actual web core. And did I not just add these changes? Yeah, wait, let's add web CSS property derive. Add p web core. I just added this, did I not? Yes, 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 yes. Okay, apparently I just did something wrong earlier. So let's write a nice commit message. Web core. Create a parser macro for CSS property values. That's too long. Let's just call it CSS values. Or maybe add parser macro for CSS property values. Ah, that fits into a commit message. Nice. Added a simplistic proc macro that can parse CSS property values consisting of either a CSS value or a keyword. Note that multiple values, for example, as in border 1 pixel solid black, are not supported yet. Only enum style properties can be parsed. Though actually, I suppose it wouldn't even be that hard to parse this, right? Because I do believe that while border 1 pixel solid black is valid, border solid black 1 pixel, for example, would not be valid. So I could just create a separate CSS value type for, but can I do border 1 pixel black and omit the solid? I'm not sure. Let's actually test this out. Once I have written the commit message. Very nice. That's a good commit. I really like it. Okay. So let's quickly test this out. Let's add a border to every element. Border 1 pixel black. So does this work? It does not, but if I add 1 pixel solid black, then it works. Okay, so that is actually quite nice. I think we can parse this at some point. It shouldn't be too hard. Either way, this was a very nice commit. I'm very happy with the changes that I've made today. And I thank you all for sticking around until the end, and hope you learned something new today. See you all later. Bye.